After the swashbuckling success of Assassin's Creed Black Flag, many of us were left wondering how Ubisoft could possibly raise the bar after Assassin's Creed turned pirate. Well, Assassin's Creed Unity sees us bidding farewell to the high seas and free-falling headfirst into the French Revolution.
I've heard reports that an assassin is nearby. That you are his intended target.
The worm has grown a spine.
Conspiracy.
We have the advantage now.
Intrigue. A rapidly thickening plot.
This is our moment, my friend.
To meet justice.
Add some bestiality and a lecherous priest, and I say you have the beginnings of a beautiful novel.
If we hadn't come straight off the back of Assassin's Creed Rogue, I'd say I would have felt a pang of longing for the ocean, but times certainly have changed. And with Paris literally on the brink of revolution, you immediately find yourself caught up in the thrill of social change.
Our leading man this time around is Arno, a young chap whose father was also an assassin.
And when I get back, we'll see the fireworks.
The game begins in Versailles, and cleverly ties in with the way Assassin's Creed Rogue ended.
When Arno's father is killed, he sets out on a quest of redemption. With a spot of star-crossed love with a Templar named Elise for good measure. It's not the most interesting story, is it?
No. I mean, the Templar assassin conflict gets muddied with these characters, which is kind of cool, but also a little cliche. But the way Arno works his way up the ranks of the Assassin Brotherhood is very reminiscent of Assassin's Creed 2.
Arno Dorian is dead.
This whole setup reminded me a lot of that game. In fact, there's a general feeling of paring things back to the series' roots, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, AC2 was always my favourite.
Let's address the negatives first. We weren't greeted with the usual standard of polish, were we, when we booted this up?
No, it was a little worrying. I just don't know what happened. We started to get reports of bugs and glitches. And sure enough, in the very first mission, I was faced with crowds of French dandies performing some kind of choreographed flash mob routine.
We reviewed this on Xbox One, and it just seems to really struggle at times with frame rate issues, which is such a shame when the city looks this good. And can we take a moment to talk about the loading?
Oh, I could feel myself aging 10 years every time I had to sit through a loading sequence. And when one of the biggest features of the game, online co-op, failed to function reliably for many, it was looking pretty grim.
Over here.
Yes, but happily Ubisoft patched in the first week, and that seemed to resolve most of those issues quickly.
Yeah, I think for a game this big and feature-rich, the old within-a-week patch is acceptable. But let's put this shaky start behind us, Barjo, and talk about Paris. Ah, Paris, vous êtes enchanteur.
Gérard Depardieu. The very first thing I did in this game was make a beeline for Notre Dame. The history and the architecture is quintessential to the Assassin's Creed series, and scaling these iconic buildings is absolutely breathtaking. Down on the streets, however, we're not talking rosy, romantic Paris. The streets here are muddy and volatile.
For me, this is where the game just shines. I mean, never before have I experienced an Assassin's Creed setting so truly dynamic and living. As you progress through this game, the revolution actually escalates around you, with people in the streets running and yelling, some brandishing pitchforks, waving flags or burning effigies. You'll pass barricades and protests. And see guards often involved in conflicts with citizens, some of which you can take part in. Honestly, Barjo, it's nothing short of astonishing just how much detail they've put into all the NPC action.
Yeah, I loved it, and I'm just so excited that this is where open world games are heading. With scenes unfolding before your eyes, and events taking place around you as you just happen to pass by. But I want to know, Hex, why don't any of them have French accents?
This is not a just world. This is France.
You're a dead man.
We'll talk about this later.
And where in God's name have you been?
Not even Arno.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? I mean, Ezio had an Italian accent, and so did everyone else in Italy. It's so odd that a French company has set a game in France and then made everyone sound British.
Piss off, you lot.
And it's a shame too. While Arno's voice actor does a fine job,
Who are you, precisely? And why help me?
a French accent would have given him a much more unique quality, I think. Anyway, another thing I noticed were the incredible interiors. Buildings are no longer just facades, but fully realised dwellings that you can just wander in and out of.
Yeah, and with thought put into each of them too, so that they feel like they belong to someone and are lived in. You'll often find yourself in these rooms by chance as well, as they've been folded into the free-running system, allowing you to slip into windows as you traverse.
It's not perfect, you will still occasionally fumble with climbing in windows, and the pathfinding leading you in the opposite direction to where you want to go. The basic parkour movement has evolved drastically with this installment. It just feels different the way you move about, doesn't it? Arno doesn't run, he practically flies.
Yeah, it's so good. There are new and more complex animations to the way he navigates each and every little ledge and handhold. I just love the way he leaps and turns, or scrambles up a flat surface, or practically flings himself through the air to make a particularly big jump.
And you're not held back in any way from the start. It doesn't waste time teaching you things you probably already know if you've played a bunch of AC games. You can just do it, but there are plenty of tutorials if you need them.
Yeah, plus while in previous games a poorly aimed jump would see me taking hefty fall damage, now I find you just barely touch the ground. Even if you aren't looking at where you're going and just jumping blindly, he always manages to find something to grab onto. It feels incredibly fluid, and your flow is rarely broken because of this.
For me, the best new addition is that controlled descent. What a revelation.
Isn't it?
It's basically an addition to the free running that allows Arno to automatically pathfind his way efficiently down the sides of buildings as well as up. It works so well and suddenly seems so obvious. It's a wonder why no one thought of this earlier.
I know. Likewise, there have been some really nice additions to the combat.
Yeah. Fights are tougher, rely heavily on counters, which we like, and utilise an awesome array of weapons. I especially liked the polearms. So fancy.
Yeah, all the animations in the fights look great, don't they? And they reflect the fight style of the period. Swift and elegant. Now, personally, I never usually go for heavy weapons. They're so slow. But as usual, I spent my first hour in the game just collecting chests and decided to spend all of my loots on this fine axe. It's just awesome. It's so deadly with some brutal finishes. And paired with this red leather outfit, I like to call this look Kinky Executioner.
Not exactly the most inconspicuous choice for an assassin.
I do like that all the clothing items now have RPG-style stat boosts as well as looking flash. But then there's that eternal conflict of practicality versus fashion.
Yes, I don't need a health buff, but this hood is fabulous.
The way you approach missions has more of a focus on refined stealth now too.
Yes, gone are the days of hiding in the bushes, whistling to attract poor dopey enemies in your direction. Now an actual proper cover system is in play, with a kind of last known position mechanic in the vein of Splinter Cell.
I really liked this. It just feels more sophisticated to approach stealth in this way.
Didn't become a puff of smoke now, did you?
Higher risk, but as always, planning your attack in a room full of targets is as thrilling as ever. And since you can easily get overwhelmed if you blow your cover, it encourages you to make proper use of your gadgets.
Yeah, despite playing so many of these games, I forget I have so many items. I'd often fail an attempt without realising I hadn't used a single bomb or a bullet. And the second time around, you realise it's the game's way of guiding you towards all those tools that you're given.
But you rarely desync now just for breaking stealth, which is a welcome change for me. I always found that so irritating.
Yeah, me too. Some of those assassination animations are brutal too.
Yeah, they're pretty spectacular, and they happen so organically, you just feel deadly. I also think they've been really smart with what they've chosen to leave out of this installment versus what they've left in or introduced.
Yeah, it does feel restrained, but it stops the game from becoming overcomplicated. Plus, often some things you miss, like double assassinations, are simply upgrades you can purchase down the track if you choose.
Plus, there are other parts of the game that'll feel overcomplicated in other ways anyway. The world map is a mess of objectives, side quests, collectibles, chests, locked chests, things you can only unlock if you sign into some Ubisoft thing, or play the companion app, and I'm not really criticizing any of that because I like the idea of companion apps. It can just be a little bit daunting when you're trying to figure it all out initially. And I think some will consider these roadblocks and find them frustrating.
Yeah, it can feel a bit disorganized, plus there are a whole bunch of different kinds of currency to get your head around. Nearly all of the side missions are optional though, and it's worth trying at least one of each to figure out which ones you like doing.
It seems some royalist fanatics are on a book-burning spree.
Because they can be a great way to not only earn cash, but to explore the city and discover new stories.
Yeah, they actually involve real characters that take you on a bit of a journey.
I foresaw that someone would come help me.
Like this psychic who had me carry out assassinations for her based on her premonitions.
Come with me and I will sense their presence.
And there are murder mysteries where you play detective.
Yeah, I even did a mission for Madame Tussauds herself, collecting heads for her to model wax figures on.
I promised the Assembly I would make masks of famous victims of the guillotine.
I think my favourites were those Nostradamus ones where you have to solve riddles that lead you to the next clue. I was researching online and everything, because those clues unlock the fancy armour, and I love unlocking the fancy armour.
What is it?
An heirloom of the Brotherhood. That armor was worn by Thomas de Cornille.
I have no earthly idea who that is.
It's great when they take you somewhere famous too, like those catacombs below Paris.
The Abstergo stuff this time is mercifully minimal.
So, this is where we stand. Last year, Abstergo acquired the body of a man we call a Sage, one of a rare breed of humans with a surplus of ancient DNA.
It seems like Ubisoft have gradually taken the hint that everyone hates those bits and have very much made them a part of the background. In Unity, you're essentially world hopping through the past with VR technology. So when this is disrupted, you encounter rifts that see you hopping through Paris in different time periods.
Yeah, I like that they've tried to get creative with that stuff, but I'm still of the opinion that the games would be better off without the Abstergo element entirely. I just find it distracting and try to ignore it wherever possible.
Okay, let's talk about the co-op. Despite a rough start, once we got this working, I was stoked with how well it played.
I was pleasantly surprised too. I've always kind of enjoyed the multiplayer with Assassin's Creed games, but they have been a bit of a one-time affair, and I was wondering how this would translate logistically to a cooperative experience, but it just works.
Yeah, I mean, at first we didn't even bother with the missions.
This is dangerous.
It was just such a novelty to see our own characters in the same game, free-running and climbing cathedrals together.
No, hold still so it looks beautiful. Stop turning around. That's such a beautiful shot, and you're doing like pirouettes on the thing. You are the lamest assassin ever.
Assassin.
After the obligatory outfit appraisal, of course.
Very suave.
Yeah, I think it's a bit fabulous, the purple.
Not quite as badass as me, though, really.
Co-op missions will see you completing similar objectives to the single player, only they've been designed to be completed with multiple players in mind. There's a guy there, and now he's dead.
I like that the missions themselves have been specifically geared towards the number of players too. It just feels well balanced.
Yeah, and you can approach a mission side by side. Or with each of you going in different directions to flank your enemy. It makes for some great new strategy.
Yeah, and it's hilarious to see the clash of playstyles too. I mean, one of you might be all about the stealth, while the other chooses to take a less subtle approach.
I got a really good strategy for this one.
Yeah. No, Bajo.
Assassin. And I'm down. And there's great fun to be had ripping on whoever breaks stealth first.
Yeah, you, always you.
So there's like a ring of guards, and there's this guy, and he's just in the cart just there.
We gotta save that guy. I got this.
What? Where did you...
Hi, everyone!
No, Bajo! What are you doing?
No time for fighting. I have to save gold dude.
Oh my gosh.
You're free.
No,
You're
it's a
free.
mess.
You're free.
Oh gosh, I am dead. That was terrible.
Well, we should definitely wrap this up, or they'll release another Assassin's Creed game before we're done reviewing this one.
Good point. I like all the smart changes they've made with this game. It feels like a really mature evolution for the series. But I think in terms of story and world, the series peaked with Black Flag. That's a tough act to follow. Unity feels like a significant stepping stone on the way to the next big wow factor installment for the series, but it hasn't quite hit the mark itself.
I'll tell you all I know once we're away.
It's still an incredible achievement of game design. I'm giving it 8 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Yeah, I mean, a stepping stone maybe, but in the right direction, I think. Sure, it may not have the wow factor of pirate ships and cannon fire, but the way Ubisoft has brought the city of Paris to life is unlike anything else that's come before it, in my opinion. I am disappointed it had such a shaky launch, and it may not be my favourite in the series either, but they've evolved the core gameplay beautifully, so I'm giving it 8.5.
So that fall would actually break his bones.
Because you're an assassin, it doesn't break your bones. That's basically that. What did he ever do to you? That poor man.
He started pulling out his stuff. Why are you stealing his stuff? You're not allowed to berate me for murdering him and then steal his stuff.
Now that he's dead. Whoa!
I've started.
Oh, it's on now. Well done. Well done.